As fire rained down on their village and the sky turned black with smoke, a small group fled into the jungle hoping to leave the war behind. But what waited inside the forest was something far older, far darker. They entered the jungle to escape the war, but what they found was far worse. As fire rained down on their village and the sky turned black with smoke, a small group fled into the jungle hoping to leave the war behind. But what waited inside the forest was something far older, far darker. When the flames licked at their heels and the air grew thick with the smell of burning dreams, 7 villagers had a choice: burn to death or run into the green hell of the jungle. For the 6 men, 2 women, and 3 children who chose to flee, there was no turning back. Their backs bent under the weight of hope and fear as they raced away from the only life they'd ever known. Behind them, the soldiers shouted, their words lost to the crackling of flames and their laughter echoing the hiss of bullets. The jungle welcomed them with silence. Not peace. Silence. No bird song, no wind through the leaves, no familiar sounds of the forest they'd known their whole lives. Only the crunch of leaves under their bare feet and the pounding of their own hearts against their ribs. All around them, the ancient trees stood silent, unblinking witnesses to the horror unfolding in the clearing they'd fled. The jungle was a maze of green, an emerald labyrinth with no discernible path. But they couldn't stop. They had to keep moving. To stay still was to become part of the trees, to be one with the shadows and the secrets they held. They ran for days, weeks, maybe months. Time lost all meaning as they stumbled through the suffocating embrace of the jungle. Their bodies bore witness to the passage of time, their skins scratched and torn by relentless vines and leaves, their bellies hollowed by hunger and despair. Every rustle in the undergrowth sent shivers down their spines. Every snapped twig sounded like pursuing footsteps. They were being watched. They could feel it, though nothing stirred in the green gloom. Then the nightmares began. Dreams of fire and blood, of screams echoing in the night, of loved ones lost and found, and lost again. They clung to each other in the darkness, seeking solace in shared fear and grief. But the jungle demanded its due and offered little mercy. It took the strongest first, a young man named Taka, who collapsed one evening, his eyes wide with terror, a strangled cry on his lips. They found him in the morning, his body contorted in a silent scream, his eyes staring sightlessly at the unforgiving canopy above. They didn't know it yet, but they had crossed into a place no one dared to enter. Locals whispered of it in hushed tones, calling it Zakuna, the Forest of Echoes. A place where the dead were said to whisper, and no outsider ever returned. The whispers grew louder, mingling with the rustling leaves and the murmur of the stream, weaving tales of sorrow and despair. At night, voices drifted through the trees, singing songs of forgotten sorrow. The villagers huddled together, terror tightening its icy grip around their hearts. They couldn't understand the words, but the melody spoke of loss and longing, of love and death, of joy and despair. It was a symphony of emotions that resonated deep within their souls, stirring memories they thought long buried. Then came the trees. They shifted at the edge of their vision, reaching out with gnarled branches like skeletal fingers. Roots snaked across the ground, binding the trees together in a macabre dance. The forest seemed to close in around them, suffocating them with its dense foliage and oppressive silence. It was as if the very trees themselves were reaching out, trying to pull them down, to drag them into the suffocating embrace of the earth. Fear choked their laughter, grief silenced their songs. They walked in silence now, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of decaying leaves. Every snap of a twig, every creak of a tree sent a jolt of fear through them. They were being watched. They knew it. The jungle was alive, breathing, and it wasn't friendly. The next to go was a woman named Nia. They found her hanging from a tree, her lifeless eyes staring vacantly at the sky, her body swaying gently in the breeze, as if beckoning them to join her. Panic tightened its grip around their hearts. Were they supposed to survive when the forest itself was their enemy? They had no weapons, no defense against the unseen terror that stalked them day and night. They tied ropes around each other, a desperate attempt to stay connected, to make sure no one got lost in the endless green. But the forest didn't care about their bonds. It took another, then another, and soon they were down to just 4, the youngest of the group. clinging to life as if it were a lifeline. They didn't know how many days, weeks, or months passed. Time had ceased to exist in this green hell. All they knew was the oppressive presence of the forest, the constant fear that gnawed at their sanity, and the haunting melody of the dead. Then one night, as the full moon cast an eerie glow over the forest floor, they saw it. A break in the trees, a faint glimmer of light in the distance. Hope, fragile as it was, flickered to life within their weary hearts. With renewed determination, they stumbled towards the light, their bodies aching, their spirits broken, our minds on the verge of collapse. As they emerged from the thicket, blinking in the sudden brightness, what they saw before them made them gasp in awe and disbelief. In the clearing stood a set of stone steps, an ancient staircase leading up into the ruins of a forgotten city. Vines and creepers had long since claimed the crumbling walls, yet the steps remained clear and inviting, as if guiding them towards a long-lost home. At the top of the stairs, bathed in the silver light of the moon, stood a series of stone monoliths, each intricately carved with ancient symbols and glyphs. One of the elders, her face a roadmap of hardship and wisdom, stepped forward. Kneeling beside the monolith, she traced the glowing carvings with trembling fingers. Her voice, hoarse with disuse, echoed the lament of the forest. "This was once a great city," she whispered, her words heavy with sorrow and regret. "A place of power and wisdom, home to a people who understood the language of the jungle. But they grew greedy, reaching further than they should, trying to tame the untamable. And now the jungle has reclaimed what was lost. This place," she said, her gaze sweeping over the ruins, "is a warning." That night they gathered around a bonfire, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames. They shared their stories, their fears and their hopes, their voices mingling with the rustle of leaves and the murmur of the stream. They sang songs of their homeland, of loved ones lost and dreams deferred. And as the fire burned low and the embers glowed red, they made a decision. They wouldn't run anymore. They would stand their ground. They gathered flowers, leaves, and herbs, weaving them into garlands of peace. They sang ancient songs of harmony, their voices rising and falling like the tide, and then they waited. The forest was silent, watching, waiting. And then, as if in response to their plea, the heavens opened and the rain poured down, washing away the dirt, the sweat, the despair, the tears. It was a cleansing deluge, a baptism of sorts, washing away the sins of the past, both theirs and the forest's. When the sun rose the next morning, the world was different. The jungle seemed less oppressive, the trees less menacing. The ruins stood silent, their secrets buried in the soil. The fog had lifted, and in its place was a thin layer of mud. Before them lay a clear path, almost as if the forest itself was showing them the way. They followed the path, and they lived to tell the story. When they finally emerged from the jungle, blinking in the sunlight, the world seemed new. They had survived. They had faced the demons of the forest and emerged victorious. The jungle had tested them, broken them, and healed them. They bore the scars of their ordeal, but they were alive. What they left behind wasn't just footprints. It was a story of fear, courage, and survival when nature itself becomes your enemy. When the echoes of the past refuse to stay buried. They left behind the whispers of the dead, the ghosts of the forest, and the ruins of a forgotten city. They carried with them the scars of their ordeal, the memories of those they lost, and the wisdom of the ancients. They were forever changed, forever marked by their encounter with the forgotten path. And so the legend of the Forest of Echoes continues, a warning to those who enter the green unknown, testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not against other men, but against the forces of nature and the specters of our own past. Because in the jungle, silence doesn't mean peace. It means something's watching. Do you dare venture into the woods at night? Do you believe the jungle is hiding something? Share your thoughts. If this story haunted or moved you, like the video and share it with someone who loves forgotten legends. Subscribe to The Forgotten Path for more stories where the wild remembers and the past refuses to stay buried. Until next time, walk carefully. You never know what might be watching from the shadows or listening.